as we watch this unfold, we, the people, not sure what to believe. Do we want to wear a mask everywhere we go? What is the real purpose of wearing a mask, and where's the science? If we take care of our immune systems, then we can fight this off. But if you're at risk, if you're a cancer patient or you have some underlying conditions, some Lyme disease and stuff, you're at risk. And actually, those people are more in line to get preventive hydroxychloroquine and zinc. That makes perfect sense.
It takes 0.05 cents to actually manufacture hydroxychloroquine. Prior to the COVID, you could buy a month's supply of hydroxychloroquine for maybe $5, at the very most $15 for a month's supply. Unfortunately, now that COVID has come out and there is just so much press about it, unfortunately that price has gone up because many of the manufacturers that were manufacturing it have now been enticed to actually do a much more expensive medication called remdesivir, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Yes.
That is, instead of being pennies on the pill, instead it is $3,000 to $4,000 a vial.
And who's benefiting the most from that medication?
Well, of course, the pharmaceutical industries as well as the hospitals.
What's going on, ladies? Where's that science? And maybe we all need to be asking those questions. We need to stand for our constitutional right. This is not a virus that we need to be really afraid of.
But they couldn't come and the truth is, I was in a pickle. I didn't have anybody coming much at that time, except the great Dr. Ardis. So Dr. Ardis, it's your turn. Come on up here. And he's live. God bless him.
I am live. And that was a great presentation by Dr. Peter Bregan. Ginger actually texted me right after you called and said, "Are you coming really?" And I said, "Yes, I'm coming," because almost everybody else couldn't come that they wanted to come. And then Ginger Bregan called, and they were so excited that I was going to be here. So that'll be fun to have some interaction a little bit later with Dr. Peter Bregan and his wife probably, which will be great. Okay, I want to be mindful on time because I don't want to make this whole day late. So what time do you want me to stop? Nobody wants to go late.
Sure, we're going to go late. You hear that? Take your time. Listen, we are a bit late behind this time here, but we have Dr. Bryan and we have Julia Haller, and we have Dr. Chris Casales, and I'm just excited about all three of them. So I'm figuring I'll be here as long as I need to be here so that I get to hear all their messages. I need to tell you too, once we get through here today, whatever time that is, we have a VIP dinner party going on. You all heard about that, right? You were offered or sent an invitation to it in that we're going to go. It's a VIP, it's $90 a person, and we're going to go down to the local, I call it the local hangout, but it's the best food in town. So we wanted to show you, Dr. Ardis, and your dear wife, a good meal and where the locals hang out for dinner. And so that's where we're going to go. There's still a few places that, not too many. It's the rotisserie, which is just down the road. So if you'd like to go, yeah, go sign up out there with Kathy and join us. Sign up with Kathy, right? Oh, you're not out there. All right. So that's where we're going to have dinner tonight. And if you like to have dinner with these doctors and you just want to keep going like I do, I just don't want them to leave us right away.
Well, if you've seen the flight schedules, we're all down here trying to reschedule flights. They keep canceling all our flights tomorrow. So this is going until tomorrow, just so you know. You're all sleeping in. All right, well, I will be mindful since rotisserie probably closes at some point. So we'll be mindful on time. Okay, so the most common word you're going to hear out of me is the word next for the next slide, because I don't have no clicker up here. But I want to get through this, and I actually thought while sitting there, should I just talk or should I show them? And I think it's good for people to relate info off the top of their brains, which I can do all day long, but I think it's great for people to see it. So I will take you through stuff like Bregan just talked about, and then he's got a book. The book's sitting up here. I'm going to give one away. He sent, him and his wife sent several copies to me this week to be able to give out to people I like. So, whichever one of you I like the most, I'm going to give it to you. All right, this is a QR code to my website. I am Dr. Ardis, for those of you who maybe showed up late. This is just a QR code that takes you to the website. It's thedrardisshow.com. No, I did not anticipate being here. I know you didn't plan on coming from Florida. You know, this isn't anything we anticipated several years ago in our lives. But we've decided to step up to the challenge to try to be a resource of logic and common sense and rationale and liberty. So here we go. You can find some resources there. Next. That's the first next, by the way. There's going to be a few of these. All right, so Anthony Fauci lied. He actually said that there was a study done in 2018 to 2019 on Ebola patients in Africa. It was November 2018 to December 2019 is when the study published. This is what I was reading at the dining room table in middle of May 2020 when my wife realized something was really wrong with me. And I was reading this study. He said that this study found remdesivir to be safe and effective against the Ebola virus in Africa in this study. Therefore, he was going to use it against this novel new coronavirus in all hospitalized Americans. Okay? I had never heard of the drug remdesivir, so I was like, I want to know what Anthony Fauci knew about this study. So, next. In the middle of the study is this mortality section. If you look at this chart, to the left, you'll see the 4 experimental drugs that were in this trial. The second column from the left is ZMapp, which was a triple monoclonal antibody put in by DARPA. They funded that whole drug. The next drug is remdesivir, put in by a company called Gilead Sciences. The next drug over is called MAB114. This is a single monoclonal antibody put in by our Department of Health and Human Services. And then the Regeneron is the fourth one. You'll see REGN-EB3. Have y'all heard of that one? As this has played out, as COVID continued, I've started to call this trial Anthony Fauci's rehearsal dinner for his COVID wedding. Because what do you hear about now, right? You hear it's either remdesivir or monoclonal antibodies. That's all you ever hear about. Well, that's all that was in this study. If you look right below the names, you'll see the first number given is what was the percentage of people who died in the trial on this drug. Halfway through the trial, the safety board for the study, which is independent of those funding the study, they're reviewing the data to see, is this drug safe and effective? ZMapp had a death rate of 49.7%. Remdesivir had 53.1%. MAB had 35%. And Regeneron had a death rate of 33%. You see those numbers? See, it's good I can actually quote it to you, but it's cool when you can see it, right? I'm not making it up. This is the table. Remdesivir was the only drug in this trial that killed over 50% of all the people they gave the drug to. It was the only one. But ZMapp was really close, and this is a triple monoclonal antibody. I mean, it's right at 50%. The independent safety board reviewing this information pulled remdesivir and ZMapp out of the trial in August of 2019 and said, these are too dangerous, they're not safe, we're not giving them to any more Africans for the rest of the 6 months of the trial. We're only giving Regeneron and MAB-114. So then all I knew right away was Anthony Fauci had said on his NIH memo that I was reading that it was proven safe and effective against the Ebola virus. Well, that's not what the safety board said. So I actually thought, surely this guy Anthony Fauci is not lying. Maybe he was just poorly advised. Like maybe somebody just misquoted this study to him. So I went to see who funded the study, and it was only one person, Anthony Fauci. This was his study. So then I knew he was outright lying to all of you. Okay, so this is what started my upset. This is when I had to go warn everybody. He was selecting a drug from a trial he funded that actually killed the most people that they gave the drug to, or at least it was the most failed drug. You get it? It was the least effective and the most dangerous. If I asked any of you in here, if I just showed you this chart and said all of you have one drug to choose from and only one to try to save Americans, raise your hand if you'd have picked remdesivir because you can leave. Hey, she did it. All right, next. The second study that he quoted was a self-sponsored, it's called a cohort study. It was done by Gilead Sciences, the maker of remdesivir. Now, you gotta get this. This is ridiculous. Peter Breggin talked about a chronological order you can find on the last 50 pages where he lays out the whole plan for years. So remdesivir is put into that study in Africa, and it fails. In August, it's taken out. The study publishes in December of 2019 all the results for the world. December 2019. In March of 2020, just 3 months later, Gilead, the drug that killed the most percentages of Africans with Ebola, is given the opportunity to give remdesivir, that drug, to 53 COVID-19 positive patients as a study early on for COVID-19. 3 months later. This is the second study Anthony Fauci quoted in his memo that supported that remdesivir was safe and effective for COVID-19 patients. This is what the results from Gilead were. Next. 23% of everyone they gave that drug to had multiple organ failure, acute kidney failure, septic shock, and hypotension. Another 8% had such horrible multiple organ failure or acute kidney failure, they had to come off the drug early. Several people needed acute kidney transplants because it killed their kidneys in 5 to 10 days. Add those two together, that's 31% of everyone they gave that drug to for 10 days had multiple organ failure, acute kidney failure. Now, you heard me earlier say I was listening to what the doctors in New York were saying. We've never seen a respiratory virus do this before. When we start treating it, it starts attacking the kidneys and causing acute kidney failure. It wasn't the virus, it was the drug. And every hospital in New York, I have since learned, were all, for March and April of 2020, which was the 2 months prior to the memo from Anthony Fauci mandating this drug, every single treated New York patient was put in an ICU room behind a closed door with a piece of construction paper on it that said, clinical trial drug remdesivir, do not enter. So when you saw and heard the truckloads of bodies loading up in semi-trucks, they were poisoning them to death with remdesivir to set the stage of fear. Okay, do you want to know why they needed remdesivir? Because their bioweapon wasn't deadly enough. I mean, it was killing less than 1% of all people. Remdesivir in New York, we've already got the statistics just for Medicare-age patients. 26.9% of all of them have died that were treated for 5 days with remdesivir. Just in that state. So, Avoid the hospitals. They're targeting you with this drug. Next slide. Now, this is what I found in May. What gets published in September of 2020? France did a study on 5 only COVID-19 patients with remdesivir. They decided they're going to give remdesivir for 14 days. What did they find? Next. Remdesivir was interrupted before the 14 days of treatment. Why? Because alanine aminotransferase elevations went up 3 to 5 times normal, which means you have such severe liver toxicity, the patient is going to die. So they took him off the drug. That was 2 of the 5 people they gave the drug to. Couldn't make it the full 14 days. But read the next part. And 2, because of renal failure requiring renal transplants, renal replacement. So 4 out of the 5 couldn't even make it the full 14 days because their liver and kidneys were shutting down so poorly, they had to replace 2 people's kidneys. 2 out of the 5 died. Only 1 person lived through all 14 days. You want to know why France doesn't have the same numbers you do for American deaths? They didn't use remdesivir. All right, so this is in September when this gets published. You can see the dates. Now let's go to November. Next. The World Health Organization in November of 2020. It's on NBC News. Remdesivir shouldn't be used on hospitalized COVID-19 patients. The antiviral remdesivir should not be used. The World Health Organization said on Thursday, only a month after the Food and Drug Administration approved the drug to treat COVID-19 hospitalized patients. Next slide. Let's go to the next. This is just in the body. This I wanted to show. Yours truly up here on stage has been fact-checked by the USA Today, by the Associated Press, on my claims that remdesivir causes acute kidney injury or toxicity or failure. Read this statement. This is November 2020. Remdesivir has potential side effects on the kidneys according to data Gilead shared. Even Gilead knows. I can't believe Dr. Ardis is saying this out in the media. Next. We've already heard references, even from Dr. Bregan, about Nature Medicine. This was actually sent to me possibly by Dr. Ryan Cole. He's a part of a big group that we all share documents in. I said since May of 2020, Anthony Fauci, the NIH, they're all going to tell you that the virus is causing the acute kidney failure, liver failure, heart failure, when in fact it's the drug they're giving you has all those side effects. I've been saying that since May of 2020. This gets sent to me like 3 or 4 months ago. It was just, hey, check this out. The title of this actual research study, published in July of 2020, is Extrapulmonary Manifestations of COVID-19. Extrapulmonary means other than the lungs, what the COVID-19 virus does to the rest of the body. And I read the abstract only. It caught my attention because it was a research study just pushed into this group, and I was like, extrapulmonary, what else is there? I've been talking about this. Anyway, you get into it and it says, other than the lungs, the second sentence, these conditions include thrombotic complications, blood clotting disorders, myocardial dysfunction and arrhythmias. This is the virus they're talking about. Acute coronary syndromes, acute kidney injury. You don't think that was like a red bell that went off, or a siren that went off in my brain? And then gastrointestinal symptoms and hepatocellular injury. Hepatocellular is just a big fancy word for liver tissue, okay? Now, where you see the blue highlight here is where I stopped reading. And I was like, oh my gosh. All I wanted to know was, who funded this study? Who do you think I thought funded the study? Do you know every time I ask this question, everyone says Fauci? I actually didn't think Fauci funded this at all. I actually knew. There was no wondering. I actually knew Gilead was allowed to participate in publishing this study. The maker of the only drug given the contract to treat 100% of all Americans. How disgusting would that be, right? So, I go to the funding I immediately went to the funding section of the study, only to see a list of 5 NIH departments, which includes Anthony Fauci's. There was 5 of them, but there was no mention of Gilead. And I was like, oh no, they're in here somewhere. So in every research study, they have this ethics declarations page or portion underneath the funding which is everyone who's contributed to this study to publish this information has to disclose, is there possibly any conflicts of interest in me being allowed to participate? Next. Next. Watch this. Next. JMB reports an honorarium for participation on a grants review panel for Gilead Biosciences. Now, what's amazing about this was it's almost ridiculous when you can just see it before you even go look at it. How disgusting is it that somebody on the payroll of Gilead, the maker of remdesivir, the only one drug giving 100% contract federal money to pump that drug into every vein of every COVID-19 American, is allowed to sit and contribute to the compilation of all the deadly effects of the virus? This one and only drug is going to be pumped into the veins of all those people. This is how disgusting it gets. The moment you go into the hospital, they tell you you test positive for COVID or have COVID pneumonia, they're going to start pumping this one and only drug, remdesivir, into your veins. Every doctor every day is going to be looking at your blood panels, doing testing and diagnostic testing, and they're going to start to see that you have elevated kidney enzymes, elevated liver enzymes, arrhythmias, heart failure. They're going to notice this. Every doctor would go like this. I wonder if SARS-CoV-2 or COVID causes these problems we're seeing. Then they would have went to the internet, they would have found this Nature Medicine research study, and it would have said these are all known side effects of the virus. Unbeknownst to them, Gilead was allowed to produce and put into the list every known side effect of remdesivir. Isn't that amazing? Wait till you see who else they invited. Next. This is amazing. Advisory boards for United Healthcare. That's wonderful. IBM. I don't know why. Advisory board for Facebook. Why do they need to be there? Okay, it's weird. Isn't it weird that things get censored on Facebook? That's weird. How'd they know what to censor? Next. All right, so we know, I keep claiming, World Health Organization in November of 2020 says it's bad, don't use it in COVID-19 hospitalized patients. And there's this guy, Dr. Ardis, in the media nonstop projecting all over the world that this drug causes acute kidney failure. And when they shut down the kidneys of your loved ones in the hospital with that drug, they're going to flood your body with water through a saline IV bag. And the water has no place to go but flood in your stomach, then fill up into your heart and then to your lungs. And they're going to call it pneumonia when it's actually pulmonary edema. I'd love to see somebody challenge me on that one. I watched them do it to my father-in-law. They called that pneumonia too. And it was pulmonary edema. There was a flat line of water in their body, requiring to vent and force air into the lungs, which is the protocol you see. They are drowning your loved ones to death with this drug. So I'm out there chirping and making a whole bunch of people angry, upset, and scared of hospitals. Thank God that's what my intention was. And in April 2021, someone decides they're going to actually check and see what's the amount of reported acute kidney failure with all the known drugs being used around the world to treat COVID-19. And they took the four most common around the world. They looked at remdesivir, hydroxychloroquine, tocilizumab, and a drug called lopinavir. Now, if the virus in every COVID-19 hospitalized patients around the world causes acute kidney failure, they should all have similar amounts of acute kidney failure reported. You follow me? So they decide to do a database review of the World Health Organization's database to find out of the four major drugs being used around the world in all comparable situations of COVID-19. That's a direct quote out of this abstract. In comparable situations of COVID-19, which drug reports the most acute kidney failure? Because there's this guy, Dr. Ardis, making all these claims. Next. So this is just a summary of what I just said. I might have said it better. Reporting odds ratio compared the number of acute renal failure cases reported with remdesivir with those reported with other drugs prescribed in comparable situations of COVID-19. Hydroxychloroquine, tocilizumab, which is a monoclonal antibody, and then lopinavir. What were the results? Next. Reporting odds ratio of acute renal failure, renal means kidneys, acute renal failure with remdesivir was 20-fold that of comparable drugs. And then the Associated Press wanted to fact check me. Really? If the virus is causing acute kidney failure, all these people would have comparable amounts of kidney failure. They don't. Just remdesivir had 20 times the renal failure. Is there a nephrologist in here anywhere? I would love one to come up on stage with me one day and explain what this chiropractor is saying to you. Next. Multiple organ failure, remember, was actually what Gilead found in their little COVID-19 test before the mandate protocol. This was just published in October of 2021. This is the Cardiovascular Toxicology Journal. I wasn't really excited to find this, but I want to read a statement out of here. You'll see where it says remdesivir in the blue part. Remdesivir can also induce significant, and you have to recognize these terms they used. They didn't say mild, they said significant. Remdesivir can also induce significant cytotoxic effects in cardiomyocytes, which are the heart muscles. That is considerably worse than chloroquine cardiotoxic effects. Then it goes on to say remdesivir-induced cardiotoxicity, heart toxicity, is due to its binding to human mitochondrial RNA polymerase. You don't even know about the last sentence or know how to scientifically define that, but the first sentence I read in there should be very significant. It was significant to me. The NIH memo from May of 2020, when Anthony Fauci said this one and only drug we're going to use to treat all COVID-19 patients, it's called remdesivir. He only bashed one drug in that memo. It was actually two, but they're very similar. He said, you can only use remdesivir. No one can use hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine because of its cardiotoxic effects and death that occurs in COVID-19 treated patients. This was just in October. This isn't my study. I didn't publish this. I've been talking about nonstop the severity of causing acute kidney injury with this drug, and I've been hammering it nonstop because it complicates your ability to breathe, which is why they're requiring to vent you. Now we know it can stop your heart. Oh, next, it actually says it can cause cardiac arrest and heart block. If you remember from the Nature Medicine study, they said that the virus causes thrombotic episodes, arrhythmias. You remember this? That's what they said the virus said, and then Gilead was allowed to participate, who makes remdesivir. Remdesivir reports sinus bradycardia, hypotension, T-wave abnormalities. AF means atrial fibrillation. That's arrhythmias. Remember, I said it's disgusting that Gilead was allowed to contribute to tell you these are all side effects of the virus. How in the world could you do that? It's ridiculous. A few cases of cardiac arrest from infusion with remdesivir and complete heart block following remdesivir infusion, which is delivered into your body of your loved ones through an IV bag. Next. Anybody seen this chart before? Okay, so Thomas Renz, did any of y'all see Thomas Renz yesterday when he was here? Okay, great. So Thomas Renz is a great buddy. I love that guy. Peter McCullough calls him and I Vikings because we're big, and Peter McCullough's little. It's pretty funny. He always acts intimidated when we're standing next to him. But this chart is updated July 8th of 2021, and I actually found this chart. No one had seen it, but it was buried on the NIH's website. And about 4 months ago, as soon as I found it, I called Thomas Renz and I said, you have to be aware this exists. And then I went into the media even more to let everybody know that the NIH on their website has a chart that actually has not only remdesivir, but ivermectin listed as either approved or under evaluation for the treatment of COVID-19 patients. This thing went around the world. And all I would do is tell patients, just print the form, or loved ones of anybody in a hospital, to get your loved ones off of remdesivir. Just print this form and take it into your hospital and tell them The NIH says it's just as approved or under evaluation as remdesivir. That's exactly how the chart reads, by the way. We have gotten reports of thousands of people coming out of renal failure while on remdesivir in hospitals, having the doctors agree to switch to ivermectin because of this chart, because they had never seen it, which was fabulous. Now, y'all can take pictures, which is great. Remember, this was updated July 8th of 2021. I have been hammering this. No, next slide. Oh, wait, no, stay here, sorry. I want you to see something. It says remdesivir, adverse events listed by the NIH. The second bullet point says ALT and AST elevations. That's liver toxicity evidence. Look at bullet point number 5. The drug vehicle for this actual drug, remdesivir, is SBECD, which has been associated with renal and liver toxicity. I was always surprised when the Associated Press wanted to fact check me. I'm like, do you want to just go read the government documents? They even tell you. All right, next slide. This was the next drug on the list, ivermectin, and how to use it. So I just kept pumping this chart out to everybody, knowing the NIH would find out. Okay, so this is what I said everywhere. I was telling everybody, print this nonstop. Go, go, go. Look at the very first side effect of ivermectin. Generally well tolerated by all. Now, I have to tell you, I have been in the media nonstop for 4 months, and it always includes this chart. And I would take a laser pointer in live events and circle just one side effect of ivermectin. Generally well tolerated by all. And then I would point out that there's not a single listed liver or kidney toxicity mentioned in any of those adverse events. Next slide. Well, now it's not called Table 2E anymore. As of December 16th, the NIH decided they were going to bastardize this chart because Dr. Ardis won't shut up. So they called it Table 2F. They actually include remdesivir, and underneath it now says, approved by the FDA for the treatment of COVID-19 in individuals older than 12. Next slide. Ivermectin. Right underneath it, what's it say? Not approved by the FDA for COVID-19. Hold up, it even gets better. Do you want to know how I know they're listening and watching, paying attention to what I'm doing? Can you see which first adverse event isn't there anymore? They only deleted the one I keep circling nonstop on the screens of events. Look, look, look. Okay, the deception is very extreme. All right, so just so you know, Vicky was up here talking earlier. Oh, actually, there was a video of a girl talking about what you need to have in place before you go to a hospital and what you need to know. When I saw this chart was updated on December 16th, this is exactly my reaction. Yes, I got the NIH's attention. I know they changed this because of me. And I know hospitals were reporting that they're using ivermectin because there's this chart on your flippin' website, NIH, that says nothing about it not being approved. It's categorized exactly the same way as remdesivir, only without all the side effects. So they had to update it and change it. So they did. But my next reaction was this, because everybody started calling me. Media people were calling me. Did you see they changed the chart? I was like, of course they're going to change it. That one was an updated one from one prior. It said July. I've been checking every day, waiting for them to update it. And they said, well, are you concerned now? How are you going to help people in hospitals? I said, no, this makes it way easier. I used to tell people to print 4 charts, 4 forms. Now I only have to tell them to print 2. You need a medical directive to physicians form where you tell the hospital that you do not consent to remdesivir. You do not consent to be invented. You do not consent to the COVID-19 shot while you're there. I used to have you print that, sign it, notarize it. Also a medical power of attorney form, sign it, notarize it. Print this one and a CMS one. Once they changed this, I was like, great. Now I can just tell the audiences to use the 2. It'll be just as good. I just want you to know. I find this ironic. They're deleting stuff to make it look like it's not as good as what they wanted you to be aware of. Next. Why? Oh, this is good. This is actually what I used to have audiences produce. I want you to know something. On that chart I just showed you, table 2F from the NIH, they list only one drug FDA approved out of now a total of 6. Only one is FDA approved to treat COVID-19 hospitalized patients. What's the drug? How's it pronounced? There's only one. Okay. All right, now, if you're in a hospital and a patient comes in with COVID, the NIH says you can only use one drug. What is it? Run, death is near, remdesivir. Only one. Anthony Fauci says there's only one drug that you can use to treat the virus. What is it? Run, death is near. This whole audience already knows this. Okay. There's only one approved drug, period. Remdesivir. There's no, is ivermectin approved? Did you see? No. Is hydroxychloroquine approved in hospitals? No. There's only one. So I have a question for you. I have a question. If remdesivir is the only drug approved to treat all COVID-19 hospitalized patients, why is Medicare bribing hospitals with a 20% bonus payout if they'll just use remdesivir? Why? If it's the only approved drug, why would Medicare be bribing every hospital with a 20% bonus payout to use it? There's only one big difference if you look at the NIH chart for all drugs they have listed on that chart. There's only one that causes acute liver failure, acute kidney failure, and now we know heart failure. Why would they be incentivizing hospitals to use the one and only drug they're told they can use? This is where it exists on cms.gov. Next slide. Medicare is actually bribing all hospitals and incentivizing them with a 20% bonus payout if you'll just put on the form, on the insurance claim forms and on the patient's diagnostic form, if you'll just diagnose them with COVID-19, and if you'll give them remdesivir, and here's the codes to get it. And that's what this is. NCTAP claims are those that are eligible for the 20% add-on payment under the CARES Act. If you just diagnose a Medicare patient with COVID-19, we'll give you an extra bonus. If you'll just use remdesivir in our Medicare age group, we'll give you another 20% on top of what we're already paying you. When I said you need an advanced medical directive form for the hospitals, they're being incentivized to injure you, hurt you, kill you. Then they're also being incentivized. Dr. Peter Breggin just talked about Elizabeth Valete. She did a great write-up on America Out Loud. She did this great write-up on all the ways hospitals are being bribed by our administration to do everything related to COVID. They are also being given bonuses for every COVID-19 death they will diagnose, even if it was caused by something else, which is disgusting. All right, next. This is the woman I believe should be in prison with Anthony Fauci for life and on death row. Her name's Chiquita Brooks-LaSore. She is the head of the CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. There is a direct attempt, and it has been from the beginning, to murder the elderly in our country. And they're targeting you. The same organization that you've worked your butt off for your whole life and pumped money into are now incentivizing and bribing patients. I consider that murder for hire, by the way. That's why I think she should be in there. Next. All right. C19early.com was brought up earlier on a slide when Vicki was up here. I just have to show you. This is C19early.com. If there's not one website, you should just have this one to look at if it's not the Dr. Ardis show. You know, if you want to watch me. This gets updated daily. It's all research studies around the world, how they're treating hospitalized COVID-19 patients with every herb, mineral, vitamin, OTC, prescription drug. I just want you to see this is January 13th, updated, all research studies around the world. I just want you to look at this. It's all mortality results And improvement is the first column, and the percentages of improvement in hospitalized COVID-19 patients. I highlighted it so you could see it. Do you see where remdesivir is on that list? It's at the bottom. It's in blue. It only has a 19% improvement worldwide. Almost every other mineral, including zinc, selenium, ivermectin, budesonide, I mean, you can almost name anything. Everything is better above there. You heard about black seed earlier, that's right above melatonin. Almost everything in the world is performing better than remdesivir. For mortality, like, staying alive. Just want you to have that as a reference. Next slide. Early on this is about all I'm going to talk about with the vaccines because lots of people can talk about this. This has bugged me though, and I've wanted to hammer on vaccines nonstop, but people like Peter McCullough will tell me, don't get off the hospital protocols and early treatment. We'll take care of the vaccines. Okay, fine. But I have to just touch on this. You have to see this. The date, October 22nd, 2020. That's 2 months before the shots ever came out called COVID-19 vaccines. This is the FDA's own internal meeting. It's a 25-slide presentation. Inside the FDA is a group called the CBER, that is the Center for Biologics, Experiments, and Research. They oversee vaccines. And they're presenting to the FDA how they're going to be evaluating for safety and effectiveness of the COVID-19 shots for all Americans once we roll these out. And they tell the FDA what their working list, what they know will start being reported to the government when the shots start getting out in the way of side effects. And slide 16 has become very famous worldwide because I won't shut up about it. Slide 16, next. Oh, gosh. I want to make sure everybody see that. So the FDA put together a list of all the side effects they expected to be reporting. I want to bring attention to some of them. On the right, starting with thrombocytopenia and the next two. Those are 3 blood clot disorders. Have y'all heard about blood clot disorders with the vaccines? They already knew that was going to happen. Now let's just look at neurological conditions. First at the top on the left is Guillain-Barré syndrome. You heard about someone here who was having a hard time walking. I think Jennifer was talking about it. Someone in her family got the shot, the Johnson & Johnson. Guillain-Barré syndrome is like modern day polio. Paralyzed legs first, then your arms, half your faces. Guillain-Barré. Transverse myelitis, that's being paralyzed from the waist down. Encephalitis, which leads to things like Asperger's, autism, that's swelling of the brain. Convulsions and seizures, these are all neurological. Narcolepsy. Third bullet point on the right from the top is other acute demyelinating diseases. Can you think of any demyelinating diseases? How about multiple sclerosis? Isn't that great that they're listing that there? Okay. What I found fascinating right off the bat is that death wasn't their first concern. They actually put it at number 13, I believe. All right, if you've listened to Dr. Peter McCullough and others, Ryan Cole, there's a huge concern around myocarditis, heart inflammation. Pericarditis is the sac your heart sits inside of. They knew that was coming. Second from the bottom on the left. Underneath there is autoimmune diseases. That's where your body destroys itself. There's currently 80 diagnosable autoimmune diseases in our country. All of them can be results from these shots. Deaths, pregnancy, and birth outcomes. I like how they list that. Pregnancy and birth outcomes. I mean, what are the outcomes? You either give birth or you don't. You either miscarry or abort. So any of these, I guess you could have birth defects, stillbirths, loss of life, loss of pregnancy, and miscarriages. There are multiple countries who've already reported over 80% of the individuals pregnant have miscarried. Some provinces of Canada have said 93% of all women that were pregnant have lost their children. Multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. I like to bring this forward to people because no one really talks about this. When I did my interview with Dr. Rainier Fulmick, this is the only one I talked about. And if any of you saw that interview, he actually put his head down and he goes, "This is getting worse. How can this interview get worse with you, Dr. Ardis?" Multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children means, if you look at the Mayo Clinic's definition, multiple organs all at once in a child only will become inflamed severely, including the brain, the eyes, your skin, your heart, kidneys, liver, spleen, intestines. And if you read complications on the Mayo Clinic, death is going to be a complication from this. Bottom right, I don't need to talk about this much, but what's the last one say? Vaccine-enhanced disease. What's the disease the vaccine's treating, supposedly? They're telling you it's going to have a side effect to enhance the disease process. Next. Everybody got a picture of this? It's disgusting. Anybody want any of these? Just so you know, all of these are not side effects of SARS-CoV-2. But if you want them, go get the shot. Next. Oh, this is great. Look what data in this presentation the FDA decided they were going to be reviewing to determine how safe and effective these shots were. CMS data, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They're supposed to be doing a 7 to 10 day pull report of all Medicare-age people in America who are reporting these adverse events, and then reporting to see if they're safe or not. There hasn't been a single one of these reports that any of us have seen since December 14th when they started rolling them out in 2020. So I got Thomas Renz and his buddies at the CMS to start pulling all this data for us, and all of those side effects that were on slide 16. Have y'all seen that presentation yet? So we have them for at least 9 of the states so far. Right now we have the data from CMS. There's already over 51,000 dead Medicare-age patients within the first 14 days of the shots. That's twice the amount reported in VAERS. And this is not voluntary reporting. This is why the FDA chose CMS. It's not voluntary. When the doctors type it into the computer, it goes into CMS. Next. This is the CDC's document, August 18th. This is myocarditis. They found that myocarditis was observed more than they expected it to in teenagers. Notice the red numbers. That's what they actually saw within 7 days of the Pfizer shot. This is in August 18th, bottom left by the logo. August 18th, 2021. 2 months later, the FDA says we don't have any data that concerns us about giving these same Pfizer shots to all children in America, ages 5 to 11. There's only 28 million of those. Next slide. This is myocarditis in 7 days of the shots. Circulation Journal, I mentioned that earlier today. This is an American Heart Association journal. Next. This is in November 8th. The FDA said October 26th, we're going to give all these shots to every 5 to 11-year-old child. October 26th. This is November 8th. At this time of these reports, we conclude, just look at the next sentence, we conclude that the mRNA vaccines dramatically increase inflammation of the endothelium and T-cell infiltration of cardiac muscle and may account for the observations of increased blood clots called thrombosis, cardiomyopathy, heart disease and inflammation, and other vascular events following the vaccination. This is the American Heart Association. Their job is to worry about your hearts, and they're publishing this. If you look it up now, it reads numerically, not dramatically. Yeah. Okay, next. Myocarditis, by the way, I left this in here. Dr. Hinton of the NHS in the UK. This is very significant. They're pumping these mRNA shots into every child in America, 5 and older, that are known to cause heart inflammation called myocarditis. Dr. Hinton has already published for all age groups worldwide, those diagnosed with myocarditis, 20% will be dead in 2 years. 50% will be dead in 5. That means all the 12-year-olds on that CDC report, it's possible 50% of all of them could be dead by the age of 17. That's how significant myocarditis is. And you'll hear Peter McCullough say, there is no such thing as mild myocarditis, which is what the CDC and FDA were saying. These are mild cases of myocarditis. Next. Early treatment studies. Hey, we're getting close. I'm almost wrapping this up. Y'all learn anything? We want to bring you something that you can take home with you. On C19early.com, they give you a list of everything that's working to beat COVID-19 early. C19early.com, it's on the screen right up there, C19early.com, January 13th. It gets updated daily. So early treatment studies, and then it gives the percentages of improvements for those who get COVID-19, and when you treat it early, what they see success out of. I love the human body, and I love that God created this human body. I love that God put everything on this earth that the human body needs. I know that man manipulates it and tries to make it better, but he doesn't. So from this list, inside this list, you will see things like vitamin D, and vitamin A, and vitamin C, and zinc, and black seed. You'll see all kinds of stuff on here. Povidone iodine. You'll see remdesivir on there. Okay. Now on this, if you ever go to c19early.com, updated daily, if you click any of those, nutrients, drugs, it'll actually just pull up all the research studies, and you can just click through all of them and read them. But I wanted to do something for you guys that would make it very easy for you to take all that data and then have a cocktail at home of everything published here that you just have in your medicine cabinet. Ready? Okay, we can't call it a medicine cabinet. It's going to be a nutritional cabinet. Next slide. This is exactly the doses, exactly each of the vitamins and minerals and plants from c19early.com and the link that takes you to those research studies. The povidone iodine, nasal wash, and gargle. I actually put your instructions on there how to actually do it. So just take a picture and you can have it zone. Isn't that great? Early treatment. Just start doing this stuff. Oh, can't see the screen. I'll lay down. Casey. Somebody take a picture and airdrop. Okay, next slide. Everybody get it? I said earlier, I love the human body. Love that God put everything on earth that it needs. They're currently compiled by Paul Elias Alexander, a list of 144 at least, this was last week, 144 studies confirming natural immunity after getting COVID-19 is far more robust and longer lasting than the COVID-19 vaccines. And I want to kind of drive this home for you. Brownstone.org is where these documents live, where these OPEDs live, where these collections are. Paul Elias Alexander is doing a phenomenal job. Thank you, sir. Love that guy. But there's one I would want to point out there for you guys, and this is going to wrap up my presentation. September 24th of 2021, there was a peer-reviewed published study in what's called the European Journal of Immunology. And they found in September, anyone who had been infected with COVID-19, they found that 13 months later at that point, they all had enough CD4, CD8 natural antibodies and T cells still 13 months later that were enough to handle any variants. 13 months. Now hold on. That's 13 months. You want to know why it's 13 months and not 5 years? We haven't even had it 5 years. Imagine if they'd have published that we have found robust antibodies 8 years after SARS-CoV-2 infection. It's only been around for 2 years. All right, so we're at 13 months. They're going to keep compiling the data, and it's going to live on indefinitely. The University of Washington State at St. Louis published in June of 2021, they found long-living plasma cells in COVID-19 infected patients. And what do long-living plasma cells do for the human body? The scientist published and said, this proves there will be indefinite immunity. Indefinite, not 8 months, not a year. These are cells that live in your bone marrow and produce antibodies in case you're ever infected by SARS-CoV-2 or any variant ever in the future. What does Pfizer and Moderna both tell you? They tell you how long does their immunity last from their shots? 6 months. And they're telling you, that means you need to get a booster shot every 6 months. We're only 2 years into this pandemic, but we already have confirmation that natural immunity is showing up at least 13 months later from our own natural immunity, which is already proven twice as long as Pfizer and Moderna's. Trust God's creation that he spent all of day 6 building. He's all-knowing, all-powerful, and then he made this thing. Do not be convinced that a man in a lab figured out how to make God's creation better. He didn't. Thank you for coming. God bless Vermont.
You should think there's 30,000 people here. A little bit like it. And they love you. I have a question.
And thank you, Vermont Grassroots, for the invitation. That's phenomenal. And great job, Ellie.
I have one question for you.
Okay.
I've heard a lot about this remdesivir. Did I say that right?
Run, death is near.
Run death is near.
Run, death is near. That's what we call it.
Listen, that's the protocol. I just learned this from a friend who ended up in the hospital taking that. She survived it. So what next?
If they survived it, what's next? Well, thank God it was a miracle. You do know that everyone that's poisoned with arsenic doesn't die, right? You've seen those Dateline shows where somebody's like poisoning their loved one for like 6 months and the person won't die, so they just triple the dose or shoot them. When I said in May 2020, the reports were 31% of all people within 5 to 10 days develop multiple organ failure, acute kidney failure, septic shock, and hypotension, I have said nonstop, it's going to be roughly 30% of all people they give this drug to for 5 to 10 days in hospitals will die from these multiple organ failures. I have never said 100% of them would die. So miraculously, 70% have survived. Do any of you guys think it's okay to kill 26 to 30% of everybody you're treating? No. Has ivermectin ever killed a single 1% of people they've treated with that drug in its lifetime? No, none. Nor is hydroxychloroquine. If the question is, what do you do after they've been poisoned with the drug? I actually have a show called Healing Intel with Ann Vandersteel and their group at Steel Truth. On September 16th, I did a show teaching people how to identify what side effects to specific organs they're living with. Based on their symptoms, I can tell you which organs were damaged by the drug the most, and then I taught the audiences how to repair those tissues nutritionally and target them. So, Ann Vandersteel, they have a podcast called Steel Truth, and when I did a first interview ever with them like a year and a half ago with me and Thomas Renz, they were blown away at all the information I was throwing at them and said, "Can you create a Healing Intel show with us? And you just teach people how to heal?" Well, yeah, I'd love that. That's what I've been doing for years. So September 16th, it's also on the drardisshow.com site. People who are vaccine injured. Oh, it's not up there still. There is actually one more slide after that, but I created what's called the disease prevention cocktail, which was just for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, because the vaccines are designed to shed on you too. Okay? They did this in animal studies. They figured out they could vaccinate a few animals and let them loose in the wild, and that they would pass all the crap to the other animals in the woods. And they're now doing it with you. So I created what's called the disease prevention cocktail, and it's 4 nutrients that protect every cell in the human body, nutrients that God put on the earth, that protect every cell from disease regardless if it's caused by a spike protein, a virus, a bacteria, a poison, graphene oxide. It's toxic, right? So I created this. It's called the disease prevention cocktail. I just want everyone to know, if you go looking for it, it just got updated yesterday because the Texas Chiropractic Board got upset. Actually, I'm certain the NIH called them. And they wanted to try to threaten this retired chiropractor somehow. I don't like defame me or something, my chiropractic board. So they reached out to me last week and said that there were issues, including this disease prevention cocktail's title, because chiropractors aren't allowed to treat diseases. And I said, I already know that. That's why I didn't actually name a disease. I just called it disease prevention cocktail. You can't use the word prevention either, because that in terms, you're treating something to prevent something, okay? And I was like, man, y'all are really stretching this. So I just want you to know, if you go in there now, I decided to change it. I decided that if the NIH could try to kill you, I was going to create a cocktail to save you, and I was going to use the same abbreviation. So it's NIH cocktail, and it stands for Natural Immune Health Cocktail. And those 4 things on there at different doses for children, teenagers, and adults is vitamin C at certain doses, magnesium, selenium, and apple pectin powder, just so you know.
Just so you know, I know you all have questions out there, but we have to talk about this because the clock, and we're already behind time, and we're not through at our speakers, right?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all.
I don't want the wrath of Ellie.
Well, it won't be me, because I'll hang in here all night, but I don't, see these girls over here lined up to ask questions.
I can answer questions out there, unless you want me to answer a couple real quick.
I could ask my question by now.
Well, I just have to have a promise that all these people are going to stay here past 5 o'clock. Because we really need to move along, and I don't want to. These people have come a long ways to be with us, as have you, and I thank you.
One question.
Okay.
One question.
30-second answers. Okay, go.
What happens, what documentation is there for someone who has natural immunity but then gets another booster or another shot, or even the first shot?
Yeah, at brownstone.org is a great compilation of 30 studies showing that the actual shots, each shot, destroys every 4 weeks 30% of your natural ability to produce antibodies. You can find that at brownstone.org.
Okay, I'm a retired respiratory therapist. I've written about why mechanical ventilation does not work in COVID. My understanding is that it's because there's too much iron in the tissue and not enough iron in the blood. Is that caused by the virus or by the drugs? Do you have any idea?
This guy right here was teaching us all about it out in the lobby. I'll let him touch on that when he gets up here, because he actually did teach me about that.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Great question.
First of all, I wanted to thank you for coming and sharing your expertise. I'm a data analyst, not a doctor, not an epidemiologist. Some data points that I've heard about recently is that in 2019, China was hoarding grain. They're hoarding grain again. And also in 2019 is Event 201. Also, they had a world sporting event there. And as you know, we have COVID-19. And Dr. Malone was highlighting an Ebola-like fever virus that is running rampant in China right now just before the Olympics, and they're hoarding grain. Do you know anything more about that and how we can prevent Ebola-like fever hemorrhagic virus?
Yeah, Zev Zelenko actually put out on Getter yesterday and sent it to me privately, just his little post there, which was about this Marburg virus. And he actually tells you what to do. It's zinc, number one, zinc. Zinc stops all viruses from replicating. You better be supplementing it. Okay.
You're truly the best. Thank you. I just would like to ask, if somebody has been vaccinated, are there any antigens? Is that the right word? Like, how can you help them?
That's what my NIH cocktail is for. Really? The natural immune cocktail. Yes.
Thank you.
I have to trust what God put on the planet. It's going to help. He put you on the planet. So we'll do this.
Thoughts on proving you had it and have immunity with some sort of test, a blood test. How do you prove you had COVID and you're immune?
Oh, great. So there's there's a T-cell test you could do. Do you know more about that?
What if the T-cell test says inconclusive, but you still might have had it?
I would follow my my suggestions for early treatment regardless. You have to understand, I have a viewpoint about COVID. They're using a PCR test to tell you got COVID. If I go on FDA.gov right now and open up the FDA.gov's website, it actually says, is there a COVID-19 test that determines that you have Delta, Omicron, or any other variant? Do you know what it says? There is currently no COVID-19 test that determines or differentiates variants. So I think the majority of what you're being told right now is that you have common colds, and they're going to call everything COVID-19.
But one other thing. Given all the information we have, the circumstantial evidence that points to whether you had it or not, given where you were, how fast you caught it, and how the symptoms line up, I think everybody knows when they had it.
Yeah, they should know. Even though supposedly now most people that are infected are asymptomatic for the first time ever. You don't have any symptoms and you're sick. Do you know the FDA said in October 26th of 2021, they blamed from August 1st till October 26th, they were blaming 40% of all new cases of COVID-19, it's in their document, on all children that weren't vaccinated. 40% of all cases, they said, were coming and being continued and spread by asymptomatic children. Now, I just have to say something real quick. Do you know how people spread bugs? You cough, sneeze, snot, wiping on people. You have symptoms. And they're saying these children that aren't coughing or sneezing or wiping boogers on other people or not having feverish sweats, that they're spreading something. Do you get how crazy this is? You only spread it with your symptoms. It's the weirdest thing ever. Okay. That was longer than 30 seconds. I'm sorry. Go.
Thank you very much. So the answer to Tom's question is my story, which is briefly, I had a mild case in May of 2020, and I have a very open-minded doctor who gave me a prescription for an IgG serum test. Recently got the results less than a month ago. I have 250 times the limit, according to the Mayo Clinic, the threshold for showing immunity for a person who has recently recovered or been fully vaccinated, and I have a piece of paper that says that. So the question is, are there any shedding studies that show that I can spread this by hugging people?
Share your antibodies.
But Tom, I will say this with you.
Everybody needs to hug that guy before he leaves.
Yeah, right. So could love be the answer, right?
Yeah, love is the answer. Everybody hug each other. Don't you leave without giving me a hug.
You're great.
One quick question I have for any other speakers coming up, because I think so many of us in Vermont have been so involved in this and are so highly educated on it, but it's a nightmare living here, and we love it. But other than Vermont's a beautiful state. Other than not complying, which many of us are, what can we take away from this conference as to how to stop this madness in the best way? Be it in addition to not complying, political, protesting, sitting on our legislators' steps on end. What recommendations do the speakers have to really fight this on a level that we can win?
My dear, I'm going to answer that for you. Our events have been producing many, many, many people who have come forward to help support this kind of forum where we can learn and go out and tell our friends and learn to say no. You know, like you have to say to your kids, no, no, no. You're not going to run out on the road and get run over. No. So Vermonters have not been doing that. We've been very promiscuous about it all.
Now, I actually asked Zev Zelenko the other day in a phone call, how are we going to fix it? And he goes, just say no. And I was like, that's funny, I've been saying that nonstop. When Nancy Reagan said, don't do crack cocaine, she didn't say we need to hold public hearings in state legislators' buildings. We need to have conferences at churches all over the place, rallies, grassroots. It was way simpler. Just say no. Now, I will say, I have 5 kids, and I've told them not to run in that road. And there have been times I've had to force them off the road because they didn't listen. You can really demand of your legislators to hold public hearings and invite us to come talk to them. This is the 6th state that we've been invited to in the last 4 weeks, where we'll meet with senators, state legislators, state reps in buildings, in Capitol buildings, and they're blown away by what we bring them. I've heard from multiple senators from Monday's meeting in Iowa's state Capitol building. They've never had more than 2 senators ever show up at a rally ever, and they called for one. And when I agreed to, I was the first one to say I would go. So I showed up, and then 5 other MDs came, one from Maui. Dr. Kirk from Maui flew out there and wanted to join me, which was phenomenal. They said they'd give us 1 hour. There were 10 senators and 20 state reps. They'd never seen that many ever, and we had 1 hour. And I kicked off the presentation, and we were there 2.5 hours later. They were still asking questions. So there is something you could do. Go get the legislators that write these laws that can step in. And as a result, they actually said, the senators raised their hand and said, well, what do we do now? And this is what Dr. Kirk from Maui stands up, this pediatric cardiologist, goes, I know what you can do. You can have a public hearing and bring in the Iowa State Pharmacy Board and the Iowa Medical Board, bring them in here and have a public hearing for the record. Why it is they're taking these licenses from these doctors, why they're restricting life-saving medications. Bring them in here and make them accountable. Yes, you can do something.
Lord God, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Listen. Woo. Oh, we are blessed. We are totally blessed.